welcome to Grounds Patrol, a Newgrounds community podcast. My name is Will Comer. I'm your host. This is episode 2 of Grounds Patrol, which is very exciting, almost as exciting as episode 1 was. This is also the first episode of Grounds Patrol to be a creator interview, where I get to actually talk in person, well, not in person, online, but you get my drift, to a person who inspires me, who is a Newgrounds creator. This is very exciting. This is actually one of the parts of Grounds Patrol I've been most excited about this whole time, so I can't wait to get to it. First, though, a piece of news. Grounds Patrol is now going to be available on SoundCloud, in addition to being available on Newgrounds. So this is because there needs to be options for how you listen to Grounds Patrol. Newgrounds is amazing, duh. However, it doesn't have an app. I know a lot of people listen to podcasts on their phones through mobile. For that reason, I want to open the second option open to you. The SoundCloud app is very convenient for mobile users. And now you can go to soundcloud.com/Grounds Patrol and listen to any of the episodes that we do here. Now, this is going to come with a bit of a caveat, because I want Grounds Patrol to be a Newgrounds service first. For that reason, Newgrounds is going to have all of the episodes for Grounds Patrol 2 days before they're on SoundCloud. That is because, I want to have the options for different people to listen to this on different devices, but I want to prioritize Newgrounds at any point possible. So if you enjoy the SoundCloud app and you want that to be the way you get Grounds Patrol, that's how you do it. Again, soundcloud.com/Grounds Patrol, 2 days after they come on Newgrounds. Now, a little bit before I recorded the last episode, I posted a question on the forum with the intentions of reading the answers on the podcast. And I have the full intention of doing that now on episode 2. The question was this: aliens find the ruins of humanity, and Newgrounds is all that's left. What do the alien history books say about humans? We got a lot of good answers. Well, we got a lot of answers. I'll say that. Misty Entertainment replies, wow, they sure love their hentai. Damned by Fate says, they'll have way too good an opinion of us. Kiwi says they would form 2 divisions, one of outcasts who look up to us, who adore us, who find select writings from their favorite users that they believe are true words, solemn oaths, teachings they must obey, and one of others who think we're all useless idiots babbling on and on and on an internet forum instead of getting off our phones and computers like in the good old days. I think that's pretty much a nail on the head thing. Yeah, thank you, Kiwi. Cyber Devil says, I'm not sure the aliens will write any history books for humanity after this. Probably not. Seven Seas says, I am an alien. Newgrounds is the only thing that I've seen so far worth sparing. The person I got to sit down and interview has been around on Newgrounds since 2011. She has released news posts, audio, art. She has built a community around herself and the collaborations she has done with others. She has many fans, and her name is Troisnyx, or Troisnyx, or Troisnyx. In fact, let me just let her say it.
Troisnyx.
Troisnyx?
Not quite. Imagine you're pronouncing the French trois and then nix on top of that.
Trois.
So, yeah, Troisnyx.
Troisnyx.
Yeah, close enough.
You know how you know somebody through the internet and through text for a long time and you don't actually think about how to pronounce a name for 8 years?
Yeah, I know the feeling. Trust me, I have had people even asking me this to this day, even though I've been on the net for at least 10 years now.
Right. It's I need to go see what's happening with my cool friend online, who you should really check out, whose name is... I don't know. I'm going to write their name down on a piece of paper and just show you. People say Troisnyx, right?
Well, some people say Troisnyx, some people say Troy, some people say Troy, as in Deanna Troy out of Star Trek for some reason. And I've had all sorts of misspellings and mispronunciations of my username. Also, bear in mind that back in 2011, when I joined Newgrounds, my username was much longer.
What was it?
It was Troisnyx Etienne. Etienne being E-T-I-E-N-N-E. After some time, I don't remember when. I think it was 2012, 2013. I I PM Tom Thorpe asking if I could have my username shortened.
That was back when the only way to do it was to actually PM them, but it was small enough that they
Yes.
actually could do it. I remember that.
I think you still can do that, but I think it's less likely to be granted. Don't quote me on that, though. I'm not entirely sure.
No, I think right now it's a permission you can have as a supporter, and because of that, trying to keep it a little more like under wraps.
I do remember, though, that in recent times, I mean, as recent as a few months ago, somebody did PM Tom Thorpe for a name change and was given it.
Okay. That's because he's the nice guy.
Yeah, well, he is a nice guy normally anyway. It's just that it's kind of rare now to see it, but it doesn't mean it isn't done. I remember this being such a well, it wasn't so much a heated thread, but there was a bit of angst on the audio forum about a name change, and then suddenly this person decided to take it to Tom Thorpe.
Angst on the audio forum? Say no more.
Yeah.
So you've been on for 8 years, you said? Or, yeah, since 2011.
Mid-2011 to be precise, so 7.5 years at the very least.
Can I tell you what? Like, I consider myself to have been on Newgrounds for about that long, but there's on for 8 years, and then there's on for 8 years. I'm really impressed with the amount you've been able to put out for the past 8 years. Can you name offhand how many pieces of audio you've put online?
I'm seeing it on my profile right now.
No, you're cheating!
I'm not intending to, but I'm just on my profiles for... I wasn't actually intending to read it off, but I so happen to be on the page right now. So,
okay. Well, I'm going to read it off. You have 167. 167. That's incredible. You have 130 pieces of art.
Yep.
You have 286 news posts, which is something I want to talk to you about because you use news posts in, I think, a really cool way that I never really thought to. So that's cool. You have a page in the audio forum for your personal music, which is 13 pages long. I think that's one of the longest of those specific posts.
Yeah, it's one of the first as well. Round about the time that, shortly before I created mine, mods and staff agreed on adopting the same system as the art forum, whereby you had a thread for your own personal work. And I believe at the time, Bren the Man was overtly a member of staff. I'm not sure if he is. I think he is back again, but he did quit for a time. Anyway, I'm not really sure what the story is, but I do remember Bren the Man being part of staff at the time. Now, he and several people, I believe, did mention this on Newgrounds chat, but this was also mentioned on the audio forums at one point in time, that they decided to permit the creation of audio threads, or music threads for that matter, so as to... Well, this was one of the many endeavors to stop people from clogging the audio forum with single advertisement threads.
The idea being, if we give you one little thread to post all of the songs you want to post, then we're preventing you from thinking about, oh, I'm going to go put my advertisements all over the forum.
Yeah, I mean, the only exception, of course, would be for albums. If you were well established and you could create a separate album thread for that, that still applies.
Sure.
So I was one of the first, if not outright the first. My music thread actually dates from back then.
Wow. Well, do you find that you get a good following from that thread? Do people see that?
I'm not entirely sure. I can't actually see who follows the music thread at all. I think some people may have clicked follow and do pop in every so often to see what's on there. I think that's a tendency that we all have.
Because I would think that like having a thread where all your music is really cool and it's a good place to see. But if you have like 10 pages of you posting about your music and nobody responding to it, it's just like a little graveyard right in the middle of the forum broadcasting to everybody.
Sorahanro, who is the user who was responsible for bringing me into Newgrounds in the first place.
Yes, awesome musician.
At one point in time, he basically said, it was I'm just paraphrasing him, by the way, that it was kind of sad that he saw that nobody was actually responding to my music thread. And shortly after, because this was a remake of a track, what I posted round about that time was a remake of a track from 2012,
Sure.
the Audio Deathmatch of 2012. And suddenly, a bunch of people started responding shortly after he made that post that it was quite lonely in my thread.
Yeah, I don't know if people know that they can respond to that.
I think they can, but a lot of the time we're just not sure what to say.
Sure.
It's almost like, let's wait for the flow, let's happily react. And I think the reactions do aid it to some degree. Let's happily respond via reaction or just listen to this thing. And if we can't really say much about it, we can't really say much about it, which can be a bit disheartening for the artist, but such is the way of things, I suppose.
But it's fine if somebody pops into your thread and just, hey, this is really cool, keep it up.
Yeah.
So let's just clear the air. Going forward, if you're looking, you being anybody listening, if you're looking at anybody's music thread or art thread and you appreciate their work, make it less lonely. Go in and say hi. Say this is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Give them a follow, I suppose. I mean, I've tried to make this common practice for music threads I enjoy and art threads I enjoy sometimes.
Good. So you are an audio producer and an artist side by side.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I really like about Newgrounds is that that's a website that you can do stuff like that. You can have multiple media that you're kind of an expertise in, and you can have them exist side by side and have people follow you for them side by side. That's important to you, right?
Well, yeah, I suppose music is my primary means of making things, but I do appreciate when people who followed me for art appreciate my music and vice versa.
Right. Because I know personally, I like to do all sorts of different kinds of art, and Newgrounds for me is one of the only places where I'm able to put them up on equal terms, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you're posting audio and art, is it typically for the same project that has multiple branches of it? Or are they kind of different things?
I think it depends. The last 3 audio submissions that I put up were for one particular project, and it was just a series of little fragments that were basically intended as birthday gifts to one particular friend of ours, because there were several people involved in this, but I'm the only one of them who's on Newgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, my songs are standalone, and so are my art pieces. I guess it's an occasional thing for them to actually be part of a project.
Right. And I see that you do a lot of collaborations with other people, which is also something Newgrounds is really cool for.
I think these days, I guess I've been focusing on them just because I want to be able to work well with others.
Right.
I've been used to producing on my own and getting the occasional bit of help from mixing and mastering, which I'm not really good at.
Who is?
I know a few who are, but I
Right.
think they specialize in it more than anything. A lot of this, I don't doubt, will be good in the long run, but it's not something that I can maintain forever, so I need to start thinking about solo work sooner rather than later. Or at least to not lose sight of it.
Oh, yeah. You want to make sure that your art is still the primary focus.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny because I hear a lot of people try to say that they start out doing solo work and then slowly they start to build more collaborative work. What you're saying is that in doing the collaborative work, you start to lose focus rather on what you're doing and what your own input is.
Well, to some extent. Now, bear in mind, not all collaborative projects are like this. One of the ones that I'm in, well, kind of remotely in, if you will, has put a huge emphasis on my work and to a degree, built its story, its lore around my work, around the music I made. And a lot of this consisted of early piano pieces, very many of them which haven't been released, many of which have been composed between 2008 to 2010, but are being remade now. It's rare for a project to really give that much focus on what I've done as a solo artist. But for the most part, with collaborative work, you want to make sure that you're working well with people. Sometimes it means making compromises, or working with what the other person's able, or the other person working with what you're able for that matter, which is more often than not the case that happens.
Are you saying that this collaborative project that was showcasing you a lot, are you saying that that's a good thing, that you get to be a big part of the output?
It's a good thing, but at the same time, it's not how all of them should work, if you will.
I see.
It's nice to have a project that focuses on a musician's work and really builds up from it and makes music a big part of it. I think that's every musician's dream. However small scale or large scale the project is, but a lot of collaborative work, rightly, should also be about give and take.
Right. What kind of project is this? Do you want to talk about what it actually is, or do you want to?
I can only briefly mention it.
Okay.
It's kind of, I'm part of a doujin circle, doujin being Japanese indie, where it's basically supported from the grassroots, and it can be about anything and everything, and any fandom is fair game.
I've seen this posted on your news post, a doujin circle. That's not something I'm familiar with. So you're saying it's a collaborative thing that you...
To explain this, doujin is right now a very exclusively Japanese thing. What it means is that it's kind of like indie stuff, but indie stuff that is promoted at grassroots level, even by Japanese law. Copyright law does not touch these things. There are conventions, officially hosted conventions, at different times of the year for all sorts of indie content, whether it be original or fan works. And you might have heard about comic markets. You might have heard about things like M3. These are just some of the examples, and they go on at certain intervals each year. And you could either enter it as a solo producer, or you could be part of a circle, a doujin circle, which is to create stuff that gets showcased at these conventions and may attract a small following as such.
That's really cool. What does doujin mean literally? Does that have a translation?
Let me see.
I hate to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to understand. Japanese culture and the Japanese art culture is something I really find interesting, but don't know much about.
Doujin doesn't actually have a word translation, but it's a general Japanese term, according to Wikipedia. A general Japanese term for a group of people or friends who share an interest, activity, hobbies, or achievement.
Sure.
So that's basically what it is. There is an actual sense of sharing with a lot of the circles that showcase at these events.
Just to make sure I'm understanding totally, the things you create together can be copyrighted things, like things that in America you would get a copyright strike?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, and what you're saying is the government will not necessarily step on your toes there. They'll let you do it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know.
Why can't we do that?
I would like to ask the same question myself, if I'm honest. Hint, hint, European Parliament, hint, hint.
Oh, geez, right.
I would love to do the same thing. I mean, my fiance and I had basically wondered what it would take for a lot of the stuff that we make in the doujin circle to take off in, for example, the UK or the US. But I remember explaining to him what doujin culture often entails that we don't have. For instance, if you went to Comic Market or M3, and you went there with the express purpose of listening to various music from independent groups.
Okay.
These people actually queue and wait their turn to listen. They stand patiently at the booth. They make sure to listen to a substantial amount. The support is very much present. It's a mindset. Now, if you try to do this elsewhere, and especially in the West, I'm afraid a lot of us do not have the patience to begin with for something like this.
I can vouch in America, nobody would have the patience.
And that is why a lot of people are terrified of tabling at, for instance, Comic-Con if they are well known enough to do this. Something like this would not take off in the West unless there was a change of mindset.
Just a change of mindset on how to be a connoisseur of things you like, of how to be a fan.
Yes, of how to be a fan from the grassroots level, basically.
Right. The grassroots level, you're saying to mean kind of like in a musician sense, you would be like not as part of a giant label. You're saying
No,
like,
or for anyone who's starting out, for instance.
so we're creating kind of a situation where for an indie artist and for a not lower tier, but like doesn't have the funds to have a huge marketing campaign, for example.
Yes.
If you had something a bit more along the lines of a Dojin Circle, you would be able to promote artists like that a lot more.
Pretty much. And the cost from what I'm aware, the cost of actually tabling at those events isn't very much. Yes, it's your own expense, but a lot of it can be, if you do get a decent following, a lot of it can be made up for with even a small amount of sales from what it is you've made in the past. Is not entirely exorbitant. So this particular one was actually this particular circle I'm in was actually started as a fan group for a game series called Artonelico.
Okay.
Which has amazing music, decent plots until Artonelico 3 came about. I would certainly recommend 1 and 2, but I wouldn't touch 3 with the end of a barge pole. But the music has been amazing, and very many people in outside of Japan who have gotten to know that series of games have liked it for its music, its plot lines, its themes, its exploration into mental health, and so on and so forth. In Japan, sadly, the people who do like it, the vast majority tend to like it, either for the music or for the risque depictions of characters.
All right.
Yeah.
And as part of Newgrounds, we don't know anything about that. No, of course.
Well, a lot of us don't, but I think I've seen maybe about 1 or 2 pieces of fan art from that game on Newgrounds before I put any on. But anyway, so I basically got invited into said circle in February of last year. And before long, I started writing stuff, and even doing vocals on one of their tracks for an album that got released in late December last year. And that's been my lot so far, really. Every so often I post a teaser or a short piece of work that's actually from said circle, but it's not the bulk of my work. The bulk of my work is still my work.
Right, good.
But I wouldn't mind sharing Dojin Circle related work every so often.
If we were to take the Dojin Circle kind of mentality of how to be a good fan and, I don't know, bring it to the UK and bring it to the US, like as a fan, what tenets would you have to stick to? Like if you were to teach somebody how to be a fan like that, what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, in the UK, it's probably a bit easier, but I don't know. I think we'd have to start small. Any convention would have to start small. I'm presuming. I'm just working on presumptions at the moment. I don't.
Oh, sure, me
entirely
too.
know. I don't entirely know the logistics of how it would work, but first of all, we need to start small. Find a place that supports this stuff. Go through any necessary licenses to host an event like this. Expect a small turnout. Tell people what to expect well before the event's meant to take place.
And what would they expect?
Well, I would assume if it is to be held anything like M3 or Comic Market, these would have X number of tables, maybe some listening booths for the full experience, and every so often on a screen, there'd be a screen with some music trailers from the groups if they decide to do any that
Right.
get featured. We basically tell them, please wait your turn. Please show your appreciation. Any abusive behavior will not be tolerated because, well, we know abusive behavior to be a thing sometimes when people don't get their way with creators.
Of course. Though I assume that in person, people wouldn't be as quick to be abusive as online.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Well, I haven't actually experienced it myself, but I remember having heard of and seen examples about a table being trashed, about people ganging up on and bullying a creator who had tabled.
What?
Yeah, all these things have happened before.
Just because the people who are going to it don't agree with what the artist is making? Or that is insane to me.
It is. But sadly, we've come to expect the insane a lot of the time.
I guess so. Okay, so if you're going to go to a Dojin Circle event, I guess rule number 1 is don't be a dumpster fire.
Rule number 1, don't be a dumpster fire. Rule number 2, be sure to have enough on hand if you're planning to support a few groups, which you likely will.
Have the money.
Have some funds on hand, and if you can't, find ways to support them elsewhere.
Right.
Always take an interest in things that might remotely catch your eye, because they could very well catch your eye in future.
Yeah, go to the event with the intention of supporting and empowering the artists who make things you like, and not trashing the ones you don't.
Yes, and occasionally, even Dojin circles could actually exchange works between them. So it's almost like an album for an album trade, which sometimes does happen. And in comic market, now this is a peculiarity to comic market, because big licensed companies actually do table at those events as well. If you're in something as big and as established as comic market, and you're playing on an equal footing with them, because, well, everyone does, be sure to, if you're doing fan works of theirs, be sure to meet the original creators of them, express your appreciation, tell them about the work you do, even present a copy of whatever it is you've done, because I'm pretty sure they'll be appreciative that you managed to do this with the stuff that they've created.
That's a great idea. Just get that one little 2-second chance to show them the cool stuff you made in their honor.
Yes, pretty much.
If somebody came up to me and showed me a thing they made because of how much they love my work, I would hug them and cry.
Yeah.
Would you say that Patreon is a good way to maybe make this happen on the online world? Because I'm thinking about Patreon as you're describing this as kind of a way to be able to support artists doing things that necessarily you wouldn't be able to support them.
I'm not entirely sure. I think some people are saying that Patreon, given its current business model, may not be able to sustain itself in the long term. And while the premise of it, whereby you pledge a certain amount and it goes to the artist, is good, I mean, how the overwhelming question is, how would it make its money? What cut does it get, and what cut does the artist get?
I didn't really realize that was the big question. So is it currently taking a cut that's bigger than people want?
I don't know. I don't know enough about Patreon to say one way or the other, because I'm not on it. But
so on that, the jury is still out. Patreon could still be a viable way for the artist.
Yes, the jury is still out on that one. Okay. I think the big questions to ask is, what if it is taking a cut from what the artists receive? How much is that?
Although, I mean, if there's no other option, I would say maybe if Patreon takes a cut, at least you're still getting supported in a way you wouldn't be otherwise.
I don't know, because it also depends on what which sites, say for instance for music, take what percentage from people. I think Bandcamp takes 40%. So Spotify, from my recollection, and I'm not sure if their terms have changed, but Spotify takes 60%, which is a huge chunk.
Right. People publicize Spotify taking all sorts of money all the time.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Apollo, which is destined for Dojin circles, Dojin music in particular, and is Japan-based, I think only takes like a 3% cut or something like that.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, that's kind of aided by the fact that there is a proliferant scene for this sort of thing.
Right.
So
yeah. We're at the place again where Japan is doing what we should be doing, just way better and friendlier towards artists.
I think that's the one thing. If I had to name one good thing about what they're doing, this is it.
Oh, okay. So there's a lot of bad things.
Well, I can't really say if a place is bad or good, really. I mean, every place has its skeletons in the closet.
Fair. I thought there was something hidden in the underlying part of what you said there. No, okay.
Good heavens, no.
So there is something I wanted to ask you about. You use news posts in a way that I think is really cool. I'm not necessarily going to go into what you talk about in the news post, which I'll just say, if anybody's interested, go read them. They're very inspiring, and there's a lot of them, and they're great. I would say that personally, I didn't really know how to use a news post on Newgrounds. It was kind of restrictive to me when I saw them for the first time.
Yep.
They don't really let you share that easily with social media. I wasn't really clear on how they get out to people who are following you. But yet, as I read earlier, you have 286 of them. You've been doing it for this entire time. You get very personal and very interactive with your community in the news posts. So how do you find that the news posts enhance your experience on Newgrounds and make it better to interact with the community?
Well, it's certainly gotten, the immersiveness in my mind has certainly gotten better because of the rich text editor.
Yes.
Which is now available on mobile as well.
Good.
Better late than never. I mean, I'd always used it as a means to say things that were going on.
When I was reading your news post, I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm getting this side of any other artist. Because I don't think about any other artist on Newgrounds I follow having that side of their life reflected in a news post. To me, I would only assume it would be something that you just posted whenever you made a new piece of art.
Every so often that does happen, where I just post when specific pieces of music or art are released. I don't do that for every single submission of mine. But a lot of the time, the inspiration either comes from a piece of music or art that I find close to my heart, or an event that's taken place in the city of Preston that's been interesting, like, for instance, the Red Parade.
Yeah, you had a cool post about the Red Parade.
Oh, yeah. I wish it was better attended. I honestly wish the Red Parade was much better attended.
I see that on the news post you were part of a thing called Sound Skills?
Yes.
You want to talk about what that is?
It's a community center, general creative place that at the moment is just a few streets from where I am. It is that close to me. But it was basically created in one of the outskirts areas of Preston called Brookfield. It was basically because Brookfield had a pretty bad reputation in decades past. It was a really bad area.
Okay.
Crime, drugs, whatever. The person who created it, a guy called Chris Davis, who also happens to be the filmographer for 2 of my music videos, incidentally. He and several people engaged in this project basically to turn this place around, to give people things to do, to get all sorts of creative endeavors in Preston and in the greater area of Lancashire going. So this place has been going on for, I don't know, the better part of 20 odd years.
Okay. What does it do? Is it a studio or?
There is a studio. There is a dedicated visual art group and sculpture and whatever crafting group going on.
Oh, fun.
There are a few people setting up a means for people to get back into work or access the benefit system. There's a group for kids. There's a group for avid writers and gardeners and those who want to cook. So basically a general creative place plus a few other things.
Do you guys have in America? It's called a makerspace.
Oh, well, in the UK there are a few makerspaces as well, and those which are explicitly called this as well. There is one in Preston.
Okay.
There is one in Portsmouth where another moderator friend of mine, Mitch, is based.
Mitch! I love him. Yeah, he and I go way back.
He goes to Makerspace in Portsmouth.
I was just curious if Sound Skills was considered one, because it kind of sounds like it fits that bill.
Yes, it does. I'm not sure if it is officially considered one.
And you provide vocals and music talent for other people there, correct?
Yes. And occasionally some music video ideas. They've also set up a Dungeons and Dragons group there, incidentally.
Nice.
I've become part of it as well.
A question I always like to ask Newgrounds artists is, does your in real life art life mesh with your Newgrounds art life? So in your case, do the Sound Skills people know about your Newgrounds page?
Yes.
Good.
I occasionally mention it to them. I've occasionally played stuff of my own from my Newgrounds page. I've informed the people there that some of the things that we've recorded there will wind up on Newgrounds, and they seem fine with it. So a lot of the time, yes, my offline musical endeavors mesh with my online one. I think the only times where they do not meet is when I'm part of a choir, a church choir, and a lot of the stuff is offline anyway. And I've also been roped in to a folk group in Garstang, which is near Blackpool.
Okay.
I've been roped in for percussion there. A lot of the stuff is offline as well. They just go from They just meet to rehearse, and every so often there's a social dance thing going on that they play at, and that's basically it. I don't think there's much online reference material for this sort of thing.
That's true.
Outside of those two, both my offline and online creative endeavors mesh.
That's good to hear. I know personally sometimes I find it hard to mesh the two because a lot of people I do things with in real life don't know much about Newgrounds, and it becomes hard to explain.
I mean, I brought this to the attention of many members of my Dojin circle, and basically a few of them did say, "Crikey, I forgot Newgrounds was still a thing."
Yep, I heard that one too.
I mean, I remember somebody mentioning on Twitter, I don't actually recall who it was, but he said something, the sentiment behind it, I agree with. The entire internet, especially over the last decade, owes Newgrounds an apology, and a massive one at that.
I saw that. You're right. I agree completely. Do you think Newgrounds at this point in time in 2019 has the capability to rise back up to be where it was?
Yes, if it hasn't already, in my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, if it hasn't already, and I know I'm saying if it hasn't already, because at least over last year, if not earlier, there'd been a massive influx of animators who do Adult Swim-like cartoons.
Right.
So we've had a rise in the quality of animation. We've had an exodus of Tumblr refugees. Now, mind you, most of them do not safe for work stuff, but
Right.
a number of them do stuff that's viewable by everyone. That they do is pretty top notch as well. I remember very many people who basically buffeted me and very many other mods for standing up for Newgrounds on the audio side of things because of this game called Geometry Dash. You may have heard about.
Oh, yeah. Every time you upload audio, it gives you a huge notice about please don't put licensed music on if you're just trying to put it in Geometry Dash and stuff like that.
Right. Very many of these people who post this unlicensed stuff onto Newgrounds or who have done had no regard for Newgrounds whatsoever and basically treated it as some sort of dumping site and basically said that it would just go down like anything else and that Geometry Dash would continue, except, well, obviously that logic doesn't hold because without Newgrounds there would be no Geometry Dash.
Right.
But also, these people are forgetting, first and foremost, that Newgrounds was created with animation and games in mind.
Yeah.
The audio and art side of things came later. They were not so much an afterthought, but they came later. And as such, yes, there is equal voting experience now for art and music, and that has been effective at least a few months now. But that was never the case prior to that. The only way you got your experience in the past was through voting on animation and games.
Sure.
And that has been the focus. As soon as people forget that focus, they forget what Newgrounds is. Now, what these people who have been treating Newgrounds like a dumpster obviously haven't realized is now there is a sudden rush of top caliber animators. There's always been a steady flow of top caliber art, the likes of which you wouldn't see elsewhere. Those are not about to go anywhere. Those are not about to disappear. To be fair, there are very many garden variety Geometry Dash users who actually want to be part of the site, who actively search out stolen content, who actively say, yes, it'd be nice to get my music there, but I also want to interact with the people here. And there have been, at least over the last couple of years, there have been many more who have shown this sort of interest onto Newgrounds, and for that I'm grateful.
Me too.
But for very many years prior, it was not the case.
Right. I feel like people who have actually come for the product of Newgrounds and stayed for the community of Newgrounds and been able to be part of it have had a much better experience in the long run. I mean, you and I aren't certainly here because we spent 8 years looking at things and stealing it for ourselves. We're here because the community is a beautiful thing.
Yes, I mean, I give the same advice that was given to me in the past. Put into the community, and the community will give back to you inevitably.
That is absolutely right. What things are you a fan of on the website? Do you go there to just enjoy and casually observe?
Occasionally, yes. I've been following a few artists, mainly a little bit of their work here and there. The one whom I followed in recent times is Widemouth Inc., who is doing some comic series, which I really like the art style of. I follow Chaz Dude's comics because a lot of them pertain to UK politics and things that happen in the UK, and it's pretty hilarious to say the least. Subtastic is always a good one, and in fact, she'd noticed me without actually me realizing back in 2011 that there were some female creators at a time when I suffered a lot of gatekeeping for being a girl.
Right. Back in 2011, that was the whole thing about the internet, was that there were no girls on it.
Yeah, well, joke's on you now.
That's right.
Lem Kuja, who does audio and art, is also one who want to follow. I tend to, for art anyway, I've been occasionally liking odd things of artists without actually following them yet, which is something I need to get out of the habit of.
Right. But, that's how you find an artist, is by liking the stuff first and following later, sometimes.
Relatively new on my list of favorites is a song called Spartiate, which is a rap song. I hardly like rap, but there's very few instances where I actually do. And that one's actually a French rap song.
Ooh,
and
could you
quickly
say what it was again?
Spartiate, spelled Spartiate.
Good, thank you.
I understand and speak fluent French, hence my ability to understand and appreciate it.
And your ability to say your name better than I can.
But there's also in that song, there is also an energy that I very rarely hear in hip hop and rap entries. Newgrounds artists, very many of them deserve all the love they can get. I think some actually do, because I've mentioned time and time again, and others have mentioned before me, that some do see it as a springboard to go on to greater things. I mean, we've heard the success stories. Headphones, who's now a voice of one of the characters in League of Legends. Demrain47, who was for Disney. Waterflame and Extrolor and F777, who have successful followings.
Yeah.
Bolsa, who wrote music for the NBC coverage of the Rio 2016 Olympics. The Weeble, who has now worked with Brian May out of Queen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't realize so many people had success stories like that.
There's quite a number, and I'm just stating a small fraction, really, the ones I know off the top of my head.
That's good.
Basically, anything that goes on Newgrounds effectively is their portfolio for years to come. And even if it's something that was just done for laughs, or something that may not be the best thing you've ever posted, someone else might consider it to be the best thing you've ever posted.
Well, Troisnyx, thank you so much. This has been really, really cool.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for being the first interview. That's exciting, right?
There's a little bit of an inside joke between my fiance and I that everything I touch tends to break. Now, I'm hoping that this is a successful test run.
Why did you tell me that now?
I'm hoping that this is a successful test run so that no devices, no computers, audio editing software breaks.
What are we going to do? My computer just broke. Come on.
Your computer's still working fine. I can hear you just fine.
No, you can't. Okay. A big thank you to Troisnyx for that interview. I hope I said it right that time. And a big thank you to you as well for listening. One fun thing, in that interview, we talked a bit about the audio forum having user song threads, like a music thread. After talking to her about that, I actually thought, well, why not have a Grounds Patrol episodes thread? It's kind of the podcast version of a music thread. So if you go to the audio forum, you'll find it there, the Grounds Patrol episodes thread. And kind of like we talked about in the interview, if you like what we're doing and you're in the audio forum, go there and give us a shout out. Say hi, say you like it. Since it's the audio community, I would expect nothing less than talks about the audio quality and why it's so bad or good. I don't know. I do know. Go check us out there, just for fun, if you want to. That is all we have for now. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Waterflame for the use of his song Below. And I'm sorry I didn't shout you out last time. I will make it up to you, Waterflame, by mentioning you at the end of every podcast from now until forever. I do want to shout out our Discord server, which is growing slowly but steadily into a really fun community. If you go join the Discord server after this episode is posted, you're actually going to find a really fun bonus clip from the interview I had with Troisnyx, where she talks about an event in Preston, where she lives, called the Red Parade. There are several cultural parades that take place in the city of Preston that Troisnyx is a part of, culminating every 20 years in the massive Red Parade. It blew my mind when she told me about this, and you can go check it out at the Discord server. The way to join is by going to bit.ly/Grounds Patrol. Again, bit.ly/Grounds Patrol. Join our server, become part of our community, have fun with us, and find that cool clip. Guys, you can follow us on Newgrounds and Twitter at Grounds Patrol. You can follow me, your host, on Newgrounds and Twitter at WillKMR. We are going to be back in 2 weeks with more Newgrounds content. And if I'm looking at my calendar, next episode is going up on April Fool's Day. Well, we'll see what happens then. Guys, until then, stay creative.